Just after 1 this afternoon, a loud explosion rang out along Beaumont Street. The bang had come from a building site where an 18-year-old labourer had been working near an electrical main.
My labourer, Scott, was nailing some mesh onto the wall there, and then all of a sudden there was just a huge explosion, ball of smoke, and of course he was burned.
Mr Berwick, who owns a cement rendering business, ran to help his young employee.
Deeply in shock, yeah. All his clothes, we had to rip his shirt off him, and he was just on fire when we got to him. Ripped his shirt off and just called the ambulance, did what we had to.
The labourer was stabilised at the scene, then rushed to the John Hunter Hospital with 2nd and 3rd degree burns to 50% of his body. Later this afternoon, he was transferred to the Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney by the NRMA Care Flight helicopter. While a block of Beaumont Street waited for 3 hours for power to be restored, the building union began looking into the accident and was furious with what it found. BWIU organiser Bob Cochrane says Shortland Electricity had laid a 415-volt cable in a groove in the wall and covered it only with plaster. It was this cable that the labourer hit. Mr Cochrane says the union will be holding a full investigation into the accident next week and could be pushing for tougher regulations for the laying of electric cables. Shortland Electricity has already begun its own investigation into the explosion. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
More than 400 Cubs, Scouts, Guides, Joeys and their leaders overran historic Fort Scratchley this afternoon to mount their annual fundraising campaign. Chief Commissioner Bruce Munro inspected the ranks of the movement's latest foot soldiers. For them, no job seems too tough.
Sweeping and cleaning up things.
Mow the lawn. Washing cars.
But be prepared for some hard bargaining. How much do you think you'd like to get for washing a car?
$4. $10.
The money raised will keep the Scouts in tents, halls, canoes and activities for the next year, but also counts as an investment in growing up.
And what Baden-Powell did by introducing Scout Job Week was give kids the idea that they really had to work hard to earn the money to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And they just didn't think things don't come easily, you really got to work for them.
It'll be a high-profile campaign thanks to a TV advertisement produced by NBN. It will be run along with Scouting's latest adventure-themed commercial aimed at tapping the energy and enthusiasm of youth, neither of which was lacking today. It's scenes such as these that have caused even long-time Mayfield and Stockton residents to say enough is enough.
In plain words, I've had a gut full of it. The SPC's been notified, reckon it's number one priority. BHP reckon it's number one priority. It was mentioned at the summit, and it may be done in 2 or 3 years. So.
You hear a lot of management complaining that people are whinging. If there is no trouble, people don't complain. But if there is a problem, people complain, and time that they did something with it.
Weeks of westerlies have peeled layers of dust from BHP stockpile yards and dumped them on the suburbs. Residents are now calling for a review of the company's licence, which specifies that stockpiles should be covered or dampened down to prevent wind erosion. Newly elected Newcastle City Alderman Peter Brett is attempting to bring more pressure to bear on the relevant authorities.
The solution really is in the hands of BHP, but the SPCC, I believe, are not doing their job. They're not trying to enforce enough that BHP has got to do something about these dumps.
The Hunter Water Board has been moving towards corporatisation since the Greiner government came to power 3 years ago. Chairman Glenn Turner says that as from January, the word board is expected to be out and the Hunter Water Corporation will be a reality. Although the corporation will continue to be owned by the state, it will hold little resemblance to its former public service character.
put the organisation into the shape that allows us to make maximum advantage from efficiency gains and productivity gains.
Mr Turner says that for the consumer, corporatisation will mean lower rates.
That should see us continue to yield real reductions in rates, certainly for the first 3 years of the licence period.
While the chairman asserts the board's corporatisation will bring only advantages for the consumer, the employees' union believes this latest move will not mean a better service.
What it means is the same as what's happening now. They're cutting back on staff, they're cutting back on numbers, they're cutting back on resources, they're cutting back on services. There are more water breaks now than there's ever been before.
Mr Woods says the creation of a corporation is only one step away from what the union is vehemently opposed to, privatisation.
I guess if you can take a guide on what's happened to the hunter under successive governments, well, we've been used as a guinea pig quite often, and I guess it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility it would be used as a guinea pig again to be the first government organisation to be privatised.
I think that's a big step in Australia for a natural monopoly such as a water board. Certainly it will be examined.
The legislation to set up the Hunter Water Corporation will go before the current sitting of State Parliament. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Australia's best surfers converged on Wollongong's Woonona beach, only to find Mother Nature had played a cruel joke. The ocean was barely breaking, and it was luck, not talent, that decided most heats. Merryweather's Marcus Brabant didn't even find anything to take off on for the first half of his heat, but recovered to scramble into second place. Clubmate Shane Powell, on the other hand, did everything right to record an easy win just 2 heats later. Matt Hoy was unlucky, surfing brilliantly on the waves he caught, but being outlucked by Avoca's Adam Leslie. The smooth Central Coaster wasn't as radical, but made sure he caught the right waves. Merryweather were teetering on the brink of defeat when Simon Law took to the water, but as usual the Law thrived under the pressure to win easily. Merryweather trail North Narrabeen and Cronulla at this stage, and both Nick Wood and Luke Egan will need to win tomorrow to assure the club of a semi-final berth.
You know, it's going to be pretty hard because it's not really the talent, it's whoever catches the waves, and let's just pray for something tomorrow, or it's just going to be more luck than experience.
Bruce McKenzie reporting from the Quicksilver Surf League finals in Wollongong for NBN News. Solid wins by Luke Egan and Nick Wood saw Merryweather qualify for the tag team semi-finals. They faced an in-form Cronulla team, but a radical performance by Shane Powell put the defending champs in front. Nick Wood and Luke Egan again consolidated, and with time running out, Matt Hoy and Simon Law racked up their wave count to clinch a gripping 1-point win. They met Queenscliff in the final, and once again it was Powell who established the early lead. Nick Wood went all out but fell on 2 crucial waves. The pressure was on Luke Egan to bridge the gap, but the ocean wouldn't cooperate. Luke was left stranded at sea as Barton Lynch caught the only waves to come through. Matt Hoy hit the water with less than 10 minutes left and Simon Law waiting on the beach. The waves kept coming to Queenscliff and they were convincing winners 115 to 89. Champions in 1984, they were proud to take the title and end Merryweather's run in 91. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
Assessing the wreckage this morning, salvage crews marvelled at how 33-year-old driver Kenneth Smith of Yelgan in northern New South Wales survived the crash without injury. The semi came to grief at 20 to 1 this morning. Travelling south, the tanker rounded a notorious left-hand bend and careered out of control. The semi switched to the wrong side of the road and rolled, its trailer crashing down an embankment. The cabin left pointing skywards, a tree preventing a further downward slide. The driver escaped through the windscreen with no injuries. The authorities' main worry, the semi's ruptured tank. They feared a repeat of last October's chemical spill on the highway, which claimed the life of a young boy and closed the road for a day. But this time the tanker's contents proved relatively harmless.
It was carrying concentrated sodium hypochlorite solution, which is the chemical that people use in their swimming pools to kill bacteria.
Thousands of litres of the chemical spilled into a nearby creek, but the SPCC says there'll be no environmental damage.
We're in the fortunate situation where the chemical will be absorbed on any organic matter that's in the creek, and also the action of sunlight on the water will break down the chemical and release the chlorine, so the effect of it in the water should be fairly short-lived.
In the grounds of the hospital that Miners' Money helped build 99 years ago, the Mine Workers Federation announced its plans to reopen the institution.
If the UMFA is successful in its aims, the facility will be renamed the Hunter Miners Hospital, providing a wide variety of acute and non-acute medical services.
Only an hour before, union representatives met with the Hunters Health Administrator, Dr Tim Smythe, to put a proposal for the Federation to run Wallsend Hospital. That proposal includes two options. The first is for the government to cede to the union the entire facility, and the second option proposes that the government give a 99-year lease on the hospital to the union for no cost.
It's essential to our bid for this facility to be recommissioned that we not be asked to part with any monies at the onset.
While Mr Land admitted the proposal was a big demand to make of the government, he said Dr Smythe was receptive to the proposal.
We received no assurances whatsoever that our proposal would be successful, but he did give us assurance that the proposals would be conveyed to the government as a matter of urgency.
Getting government approval for either option is not the only obstacle facing the Mine Workers Federation. There's also the question of how much it will cost to get Wallsend Hospital running again.
Our estimations at this stage are in the several $1 million.
Mr Land said the hospital would have to be commercially viable and 80% of the beds would be private. Despite the obstacles surrounding the bid, retired mine workers at the announcement were rejoicing at the possibility of what they see as their hospital opening again.
It's a thing we've been looking for the last 2 months.
"78 students played in the cadet and junior divisions of the second annual Combined Catholic Schools Golf Tournament. The only pencils and papers used today were to mark up the single-digit handicaps many of these players already enjoy. The Catholic school players can't enter the more competitive state school tournaments, but nonetheless there were some quality individual performances over today's round. Christy Newton, daughter of Jack, showed she's a chip off the old block, winning the junior girls scratch and net trophies with a 92 off the stick. The junior boys scratch was won by Scott Hayes of St Joseph's Aberdeen with a brilliant 73. St Mary's Gateshead won the girls' combined net score with 226, while St Clair's Taree, with a combined net score of 207, took out the boys.
These are the faces of sport in the Hunter, 180 athletes aged between 13 and 17 years. Last night, the youngsters were awarded certificates from the Hunter Academy of Sport for their service and commitment in 8 categories. The Academy is earning an international reputation of producing talent like surfer Chad Edser and sprinter Paul Henderson. Some are hopeful of spots in next year's Olympic squad, but the Academy's Ken Clifford says there are other equally important objectives.
But also importantly, I hope we can broaden the base and provide incentive for youngsters generally to keep at their sport and see that they can develop the sports within the Hunter region.
A new program brings in 2 additional sports for the Academy, wave skiing and rugby union. Another chance for local champions to show the world just how good they are.
Bulk handling research has been undertaken at the university for nearly 17 years, but the decision to establish a specific institute dedicated to the field has put the Hunter at the forefront of a vital industry.
Internationally, we are one of the leading groups in this field. It's particularly relevant, of course, to Australia because of the dependence on bulk materials in a wide range of forms, notably in the mining and mineral processing industries.
Held in high regard by the private sector, the university was chosen as the site for an experimental conveyor rig. It was today officially commissioned and turned over to the university. When mining company Menenco has completed its testing procedures, local students will be given access to the state-of-the-art technology.
Once their testing program has been completed, then we'll have an opportunity for students to undertake research and experimental work, and for us as well to carry out work on some new ideas we want to put into practice.
For one of Curry Hospital's 6 wards, the curtains came down today, leaving little more than a shell. The closure of the 25-bed ward is mainly due to the Health Administration targeting the hospital as being overfunded and taking a knife to its budget.
There's been a budgetary cut of some $600,000. In addition to that, in the last 12 months, the hospital has only had a 46% occupancy.
The hospital's executive officer admits that if he hadn't tried to cut costs by closing the ward, the state government could have stepped in and shut down the institution.
I think that it's been made very clear that the hospitals have to live within the budget allocations that have been made to them, and that if the effort is not made to live within that budget, then some appropriate changes would be made.
Mr Spindler says the closure won't affect services, and because there's already been 21 voluntary redundancies, there's no need to shed jobs. Mr Spindler says he's been assured by the area's health administrator, Dr Tim Smythe, that there are no plans to close Curry Hospital. However, some members of staff and the wider community are suspicious that the shutdown of the ward is the beginning of the end of this institution.
And I wish that the people that's making these decisions would come up and inspect our hospital and talk to the community.
Mr Frame, who's the state president of the Retired Mine Workers Association, says the closure of Curry Hospital would mean war.
Well, I'd say that the people responsible of closing this hospital will want to bring a strong regiment of soldiers with them, because this area will not put up with it.
Despite the aged community's fears about the hospital it helped to build, Cessnock Mayor Marie Callaghan paints a brighter picture for Curry's future.
They may close the ward now, but when the government changes or when the economy improves, we'll reopen it and reopen every other part of the hospital.
It's obviously a specialised art to draw and paint with such detail and precision, but Peter Marsack, a student in the Graduate Diploma of Art at Newcastle University, says it's also a great science. Peter is the winner of the National Parks and Wildlife Illustration Scholarship, the first person with a science degree to win in the history of the award.
Illustration is still important in science and art. There's no clear division between them.
3 finalists were in the running for the $1,000 scholarship, the assignment to paint or draw familiar Australian plants and animals, giving a feeling of life which is often lost in a photograph. Peter Marzik says he's looking to invest the money in a microscope, chasing new ideas for illustrations.
They might have an average age of 46, but there's still plenty of strength left in those limbs. Last year, the Nobby's veteran crew took out their division of the Burke to Brewarrina Classic. This time it's a slightly shorter course on the Mile Lakes, but the training has been just as tough.
I think it'll be a little bit tougher with the open water up on the Bullambart and the Mile Lakes. We won't have the flooded river that we had out at Brewarrina last year, pushing us along around about 4 knots. So it could be a little bit more testing in certain areas.
What they lack in youth, they make up for with experience, as the numerous open and junior crews they've defeated can testify.
Well, I've been going around for about 35 years, and I guess a lot of these other fellas are around about 20 years as a veterans crew.
The crew is keen to win title number 2 this weekend, but if not, the boys won't be too disappointed. A leisurely 150k row is their idea of fun.
Change into 12. One, number C. Who's done number C? How many people had done that one? How many?